Today, we're diving into the story of a single community, County Louth in Ireland, and what happens when it finds itself in a perfect storm of crises. We're talking a healthcare system at its breaking point, serious environmental threats, and citizens taking to the streets. We're going to explore what happens when a community is under pressure from pretty much every side. Let's get into it. This right here, this quote says it all. This is how someone described the situation at Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda. It's such a stark image, right? It paints a picture of a system that is just completely, utterly overwhelmed. And that's really our starting point for understanding this pressure cooker environment in Louth.
All right, so let's start right there with the hospital, because it's not just dealing with a bit of overcrowding. We're looking at a crisis with a whole bunch of different layers, and it's affecting patients, staff, and the entire 999 response system for the whole region.
So what does no room at the inn actually look like in a modern hospital? Well, at one point, it looked like this number, 75. That's how many patients had been officially admitted to the hospital, but were still stuck in A&E. Why? Because there was literally not a single bed for them anywhere else. And believe it or not, the problem wasn't just inside the hospital. Outside, people saw up to 14 ambulances queued up, just waiting, unable to get their patients into the swamped A&E. I mean, can you imagine that scene? It's a total gridlock that's basically paralyzed the emergency response system.
And here's where it gets really, really serious. The knock-on effect. Paramedics were stuck with their patients for up to 6 hours. Think about that. That's 6 hours that their ambulance is totally out of action, unable to respond to any other 999 calls that are coming in from across the county. A hospital crisis, just like that, becomes a public safety crisis.
As if all that wasn't enough, something really frightening happened. A male nurse and a cleaner were physically assaulted by a patient. The reports say he actually tried to choke them. Thankfully, they only had minor injuries, but the attack left everyone there deeply shaken. It has piled trauma on top of an already incredibly stressful situation. So, after that attack and a general rise in what they're calling antisocial behavior, the authorities had to act. They brought back a full 24-hour security presence to the emergency department. You know, it's a step they had to take, but it just goes to show you the severe challenges the staff are facing right there on the front line. Now, what's so important to understand is that the hospital situation, it isn't happening in a vacuum. It really feels like a symptom of a much wider problem. The sense that the community's entire safety net is fraying, with pressure building up in all these different parts of daily life in Louth. Just take a look at this. It really puts it all into perspective. You've got road safety issues, with one driver caught doing a crazy 174 kilometers per hour, which is part of a trend that saw 190 road deaths nationwide last year. Then you've got the water quality. High manganese levels are discoloring the water, and the treatment plants need upgrades. And then there's even global politics at play, with a big trade deal sparking real local fears about food safety. Each one of these is another stress point for the community. But you know, beyond all those immediate worries, there's a much bigger, more fundamental threat looming over the community. This one puts thousands of homes and people's livelihoods at risk, and it's coming from the environment itself. This is how local officials are describing the danger of flooding in the county. An existential threat. Let that sink in for a second. We're not just talking about property damage here. This is about the very survival of whole communities in the face of our changing climate. Okay, so what's being done about it? Well, the official response is massive. The Office of Public Works is running 5 huge flood relief schemes for the most at-risk areas. So the problem is definitely being recognized, but these are enormous long-term projects. And the price tag? Yeah, it reflects just how big this problem is. Louth County Council has put a staggering 170 million euros in its budget just for flood defense. This is not some minor issue they're trying to fix. This is one of the biggest challenges financially and logistically the county has ever had to face. And this isn't some far-off future problem. The threat is here, right now. Just recently, a tidal flood completely, and I'm quoting here, closed off the village of Blackrock. It just brought everyday life to a dead stop. For everyone living there, it was a terrifying reminder that the time for just planning is over. The time for action is now. So you've got a hospital under siege, an existential threat on the horizon. How is the community itself actually responding to all this? Well, as the pressure builds, the people of Louth are definitely making their voices heard, and in some really clear, organized ways. Take the protests over the M1 motorway tolls, for example. For some people, these tolls aren't just an extra cost. They are, in their own words, a noose around our necks. I mean, that is some powerful language. It tells you everything you need to know about the deep economic frustration people are feeling. And you hear that same frustration coming from the farming community. Farmers have been organizing, protesting that big EU-Mercosur trade deal. They're worried it's going to flood the market with cheap beef imports, produced to what they argue are much lower safety and environmental standards. And their demonstration? It was huge. About 150 Louth farmers got in their tractors and joined this massive convoy through Dundalk. This wasn't just a small get-together. It was a major, coordinated show of force. They wanted to send a very clear message.
But the response isn't just about protest. In Blackrock, where the flooding is so bad, the community is actually coming together to find solutions. They're planning a public meeting to create a, quote, collective approach to the flood defense program. It shows this real desire to work with the authorities to protect their homes.
And all of this, it leaves us with one final, really crucial question. We've seen a health system in crisis, serious safety concerns, and this huge environmental threat. And we've also seen protests and public meetings. So when a community like Louth is stretched to its absolute limit, where does real change actually begin? Does it come from the top down, from the ground up, or maybe somewhere in the middle? It's something to think about for any community feeling the pressure.